It's the last day of Evil Dead Week here on Scary World, and we're closing out the week with the most brutal chapter this franchise has ever put on screen, Evil Dead Burn. Welcome to Scary World, where I walk you through the best, the worst, and the downright disturbing. I'm Arturo Padilla.
Hi.
Let's get into it. A grieving widow reunites with the in-laws who never accepted her at their secluded family home. When old research into the Book of the Dead gets disturbed, the evil awakens and nobody in the house is safe.
From above. He's down below.
The first category is production. Does the movie look good? Is it well executed? This movie was directed by Sébastien Vaniček, who came onto the horror scene with his 2023 debut, Infested. It's a real dope movie. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's streaming now on AMC Plus and Shudder. Sam Raimi handpicked him for exactly the sensibility he brings to the table, his no-holds-barred visceral filmmaking style. The movie looks fantastic. Vaniček knows exactly what he's doing behind the camera, and he showcases that talent for all to see here in this movie. The action sequences are one of the highlights of this film. The action is shot beautifully with a slew of different camera angles and techniques to accentuate the sequences. A real visual treat for the audience. Once again, we're out of the cabin, this time in a huge rundown secluded family house. Vaniček takes advantage of the setting and uses every floor of that space, turning the whole structure into a death trap. Like his predecessors, Vaniček opted to use as much practical effects as possible. For instance, the fire you see on screen is all real. He insisted on practical flames throughout. His reasoning behind this is simple. He explains in an interview with comicbook.com that recreating the imperfections of fire is quite difficult with CG, that it's harder to make it look real. And let me tell you folks, he knocked this thing out of the park. For production, Evil Dead Burn gets a 2 out of 2. I loved the way this movie looked. It had a grimy feel to it. It had a real tactile feel to it. Everything had impact. Everything had weight. Vaniček did a fantastic job behind the camera, especially during those action sequences. You'll know when you see it on the screen. Everything is shot very differently than previous Evil Dead movies, and it shows his real talent and skill behind the camera. He knows how to direct action, he knows where he wants to put the camera, and how to get the most out of the sequence, the most out of his frames, the most out of his composition. It was a real treat to see on the big screen. The next category is story. Does this all make sense? Does it keep you engaged? This is a genuine continuation of the story we got in Evil Dead Rise. Remember that opening sequence? This is where it leads. The story in Burn is solid with very tight pacing. At a runtime of almost 2 hours, it's one of the longest in the franchise, if not the longest. Like the previous installments, this movie moves quickly, throwing you right in the deep end from the start. All 3 acts are well written, hitting all the proper beats along the way. The story makes smart use of the premise. The grieving widow angle and her relationship with her late husband and his family give the movie a genuinely bleak emotional catalyst, helping the audience pick a side. That said, the story does hit a major bump on the road. The supporting characters are a real problem. Not just for Alice, but for the story. The family is so thoroughly unlikable that Alice is the only person in the house worth rooting for. None of them have any real redeeming qualities. So once all hell breaks loose, there's no gut punch when any of them go. You were never on their side to begin with. For story, Evil Dead Burn gets a 1 out of 2. I like the premise, I like the concept. Fans of the franchise will see how deep this goes into the lore, but the family itself is really unlikable from the get-go. It was very off-putting, and as I said, you don't have anyone to root for but Alice in this movie, and that's a problem for the overall story. The next category is ensemble. Does the cast have chemistry? Are the performances good? The cast does a nice job. The performances are intensely physical, and the stunt team earns real credit here. Suhaila Yacoub, who plays Alice, carries the entire movie. She's dragged through hell and earns her final girl status by the end. Unfortunately, there are no breakout performances on the level of Campbell's Ash, Levy's Mia, or Sutherland's Ellie, but everyone knew what the mission was and accomplished it. For ensemble, Evil Dead Burn gets a 1 out of 2. As I said, there are no real standout performances here like we got in the past, but everyone knew exactly what they needed to do on set to make sure that this movie was successful and that Vaniček's vision was accomplished. The next category is horror. Does it deliver the goods? Is it scary? This is where the film thrives and earns all its praise. This thing is absolutely brutal. Think French Extremity colliding head-on with Evil Dead. The gore is gnarly and heavy, leaning hard into practical effects, with real fire and buckets of blood doing the work. It's merciless and relentless. Everyone on screen is in the crosshairs of the possessed, and the tension holds at a high level across the back two acts. One gripe that I do have is that the movie leans on some questionable CG in the final act, but the brutality never lets up, so it's a small blemish on an otherwise savage picture. For horror, Evil Dead Burn gets a 2 out of 2. This was absolutely the most brutal installment in the Evil Dead franchise. I thought previously to this that 2013's Evil Dead was at the top there, but when it comes to how mean a movie really is, this one takes the cake. It is absolutely savage in every sense of the word, so be prepared when you see that. There are tons of moments where the uninitiated will definitely squirm and cower, and there are moments where the initiated will also squirm and cower. Everyone is in the crosshairs, not just the characters in the story, but the audience as well. The last category is legacy. Does this movie leave a mark on the genre? Will people be talking about it 5 years from now? This is a continuation of Evil Dead Rise. You know what that means. We got a trilogy on our hands. What will resonate with longtime fans is how it reaches back to the roots of the franchise. Without giving anything away, Burn quietly ties its story into the larger Evil Dead mythology in a way that rewards anyone who's followed the series, and it deepens the lore rather than just borrowing from it. It also sets up what's coming next, Evil Dead Wrath, which has already been shot and is headed for a 2028 release. For any horror fan who loves gore and brutality, Evil Dead Burn has serious rewatch value. For legacy, Evil Dead Burn gets another 2 out of 2. After you see this movie, you will understand exactly why this legacy score is what it is. I didn't want to get into any spoilers, so that way you guys are surprised when you see this on the screen. It ties back into the entire lore of the franchise. Now let's add it all up. Evil Dead Burn got a 2 for production, a 1 for story, a 1 for ensemble, a 2 for horror, and a 2 for legacy, bringing the total score up to an 8 out of 10. Evil Dead Burn is a savage, merciless movie, easily one of the most brutal the franchise has ever produced, and a strong note to close out Evil Dead Week here on Scary World. It's only held back from greatness by a supporting cast you're never given any reason to care about. But Vaniček's craft, the practical gore, and Jakub's final girl turn more than carry this movie. If you love your horror mean and physical, this one's worth the price of admission. There are also 2 post-credit scenes at the end of the movie, so make sure you stay till the very end. Go watch Evil Dead Burn in theaters now. I'm Arturo Padilla, and remember, it's a scary world out there, but I am here to walk you through it. See you next time.